Welcome to ChatJSB. My name is Adrien Finlay. I'm the Executive Director of Music Worcester, and it is my distinct pleasure to join this podcast series with its true creator, Chris Shepard. Chris, so good to see you.
So weird not to be the one asking the questions, Adrien.
Well, I'll do my best, but I know you are the one with the encyclopedic knowledge, and I might start there. So here we are. Spring into summer of 2025. We're 1 year into our 11-year The Complete Bach project. What is on your mind?
Look, I'm going to say something that I have said to a few people. The thing that has amazed me most about this first year, and this is a foolish thing to say when we've got 10 more years, is I just can't believe how easy it all was. The viewers will not know this, but you very kindly, you and the Music Worcester board gave me a year to plan for everything. And thank God you did, because it's just such a monumental project. But it turns out that if you plan it properly, Bach does the rest of the work. I mean, I look back at this year, Adrien, and we had all of our audiences surpassed anything that we had been expecting. We certainly expected great level of quality for the music, and even that was surpassed. And I think that we have learned what I had hoped most, which is that, yeah, sitting through 3 hours of Bach is a big ask. But when you have an extraordinary cellist or an extraordinary pianist or a cast of thousands in the cantatathon, so that everything is always changing, I couldn't be more excited about it. I am glad to have a bit of a break, even if it's only for a few weeks, because it is that conveyor belt of just having to be on top of everything. And as you know, as Executive Director of Music Worcester, the thing for me personally that has taken time to get used to is that I have four years in my head at any given time. Like, it's crazy. And for people watching this, you know, these managers and agents are beating down your door because their people want to be a part of this, and that's wonderful. But it also means that, oh, you've got to solve how will we fit this terrific player into the whole. So that's where my head is at this point.
No, and I can completely concur and corroborate that. I am amazed at how this project has taken off. I've been amazed at its launch, and certainly was very excited in the pre-planning year that we had. But it's also quite exciting. Certainly is one word, but it's beyond that. To be this many years into our respective tenures with Music Worcester, and to have such a different way of focusing our attention and work is very meaningful, I would say, too.
Yeah, I thought, as will probably come up at some point this year, I'm turning 60 this year, which is very exciting. And just at the point where I was fearing, not hoping, but fearing that there would just be a like status quo glide to retirement. And people in you're younger, but in my age group will understand that is actually something to be kind of scared of, because you don't want to just get stale at the end of your career. So it's the exact opposite. And like you say, this was, I think, year 16 for me. And it might as well be a completely new job. And even with the chorus, with the Bach stuff thrown in, that has required some rethinking and some flexibility, and they've been terrific about it. I must say that for me, that's been challenging. You know, the course did more this year than usual, and making sure that the rehearsals are all accounted for. Yeah, it's change. What change is as good as a holiday, right?
But on that note, or using that as a segue, Chris, I was just curious to pose a few other questions to you that I don't think we've really gotten into yet with TCB, and that's actually the hat you wear now. Well, the hats you wear, rather, are multiple. Director, of course, of The Complete Bach. But you really came to Music Worcester as director of the Worcester Chorus, and that was 16, 17, 18 years ago. But if memory serves correctly, that wasn't your first time interacting with the Worcester Chorus.
No, and this is the weirdest thing, Adrien, is my history with the Worcester Chorus was through Jerry Mack, a mentor of mine and longtime conductor of the Worcester Chorus, who passed away, but at a really ripe old age a couple years ago. And he and his wife Nancy remained such good friends of the chorus and of so many of the singers. When I was a freshman at the Hart School of Music in 1983, the Hart Chamber Singers joined the Worcester Chorus to perform the Dvorak Svatebny Košile in Czech, and we performed at Mechanics Hall and then went to Carnegie Hall. And it's just so weird because of the Masterwork Chorus in New Jersey. In a very weird way, both those halls became something of my house halls over the years. And it's just so strange to think that had happened. And I don't even know if I've ever told you this, but over the years when I was living in Australia, I would look at the Worcester Chorus website thinking, I would love when Jerry retires, if I'm back in the States, to have that choir, because there's such a wonderful chorus. But because of Music Worcester, they get to perform with orchestra all the time in Mechanics Hall, which is such a rare sort of thing. And now, all these years later, here I am.
Well, call it what you will, but we are so glad you are here leading this project. And so, perhaps back to TCB for the next couple of questions I might have for you. And I've heard you speak a bit about this, but J.S. Bach, a catalog of works that's over 1,000. How do you even start? How do you start understanding it, comprehending it, slicing and dicing?
I was lucky that in the year 2000, when that was his 250th anniversary of his birth, Teldec put out a set of CDs. I mean, people do this all the time for composers. But I found this set on sale in Melbourne, Australia, when I was on vacation down there, really quite inexpensive. And that allowed me, the way that they set it out, this is actual CDs, in the different boxes, it allowed me really to get a sense of how everything lays in his repertoire. Fully half of it is the choral music, all those cantatas and the major works. And again, call it what you will, serendipity, kismet. I did those when I lived in Sydney. So I knew how to organize that project. And that's, to be honest, the harder thing to organize, because you have to know what's in the orchestra. Bach's orchestra always changes. Seldom flutes, for example, almost always oboes, quite often, but not always, trumpets and timpani. And you have to organize the concerts. You'll appreciate this because you pay the bills. You have to, or you don't do a concert that has one with trumpets, one with flute, you know what I mean? And there's so many moving pieces with that. And even in this first year, Peter Solsky, who everybody knows is our concert master, but has also been the contractor for that orchestra, and he and I have worked so hard, and even so, things slip through the cracks. It's very complicated. So with half of it, knowing in advance how that's going to work, that's really super. And then the other, people have seen me do this a million times, but it's always good to return to this. 3 of the concerts are keyboard, combination of organ and keyboard, either piano or harpsichord. Then the chamber music, the orchestral music, and then one just kind of, there are a few random things that just you've got to fit them in at one point or another. And that is really helpful to have those silos, because if you don't do it that way, you'll get to year 10 and it will be all minor keyboard pieces. You know what I mean? So trying to sprinkle everything evenly through, and that's, you and I meet every week, and people would probably be amazed to see this spreadsheet. In a weird way, the spreadsheet is simple and you can see quite a lot, but it's the back of the spreadsheet that's so difficult.
I know. I often say about Music Worcester in general that it's really an embarrassment of riches. It's the hardest part of this job for me all these years in, is saying no to amazing opportunities, and that might be a venue's not available, we've already booked something on the date, it's a work or piece or repertoire that we've done in the last season or two, and it's the hardest thing to say no to the absolutely amazing and extraordinary artists that we bring to Greater Worcester. So this embarrassment of riches that is Bach's complete output, and playing matchmaker with the extraordinary talent that is out there worldwide.
I can mention this because these are the ones you said no to, but I never realized this till this year. And you'll say to me, X group who are amazing, and you know they're the ones that I listen to do everything. And my first reaction is we have to say yes, and then but that's exactly right. As you play it out, you're like, it's not time for that repertoire yet. Or as you and I have found. And we can accommodate it a little bit like we did with H&H, which was a terrific concert where we got to hear Vivaldi, quite a lot of Vivaldi, so you can hear how Italian Bach is. But we can't do that very often. And so many of these people are actually touring with a combination of Bach and something else, and we won't be done. And although it is very freeing to be able to say to an artist, it makes saying no easier, because you say, we won't finish the project if we say yes to that.
No, entirely. One of the other things I wanted to make sure to ask you about was one of the mantras, in a way, that you've created, both for the project, definitely for Music Worcester, I would say, but also, I think, our community, Greater Worcester, Central Mass, and that is all of Bach for all of Worcester. And I just wanted to drill into that a bit, both to ask you what that means to you now, having the year of planning and the first year of programming behind you, and the next couple of seasons either programmed or very much in your sights. But also there's some antecedents there, as it were, with Bach's own lifetime music as it was performed and practiced and engaged with during Bach's lifetime. No?
His music, and probably you could say that for most composers of the pre-modern era, is so rooted in its time and place, because I won't go down a rabbit hole, I promise, but because we are so used to thinking of the genius in the ivory tower, and that simply did not exist as a construct. You wrote a piece because your boss wanted you to write a piece. Now, some of his greatest music, like the B minor Mass, he wrote because after a ruler had died, there wasn't going to be church music for several months. So they would write some things on spec, as it were. The Brandenburg Concerti, which are going to be performed next year by the Sebastians, his probably greatest works, really. For non-Bach lovers, they're the easiest to listen to. He wrote because he wanted a job from the Margrave of Brandenburg. But by and large, and when you go to Leipzig, as I have, and stand in that town square, and you think, oh, right, he would have performed those secular cantatas, as we did last year, in front of the Rathaus, outdoors. A lot of those things were performed outdoors to celebrate the birthday of his boss, sucking up to the boss. And in the different churches, and they were very, very specific. And here we are with the great glory that is Mechanics Hall, and to have it is such a privilege that Kathy Gagne, who is now within days of retiring from being exec director there, she was really our first major partner in saying, we will save you, and they have. We have to make sure that her successor understands they have blocked these out. BACHtoberfest weekend, Bach birthday weekend, every year for the next decade. And Adrien, I think in the end, that was an expedient for us, because it's easier to rent Mechanics Hall as a chunk when you're doing as much as we are. But that we didn't start by saying we would do that. And now that's turned out to be, I think, the greatest calling card, because for people in Worcester, they want to be in mechanics probably at least once a year, because it is it's their space. And as you and I know, people around the world know about this hall. And so that's the core of it, is people in Worcester going to a concert in Worcester, often hearing Worcester musicians, Worcester Chamber Music Society next year, musicians of the Old Post Road, maybe not Worcester exactly, but they often perform in Worcester. Our Cantatathon, which ended up being one of the great events of last season, having 5 different local choirs perform a cantata each, getting cake and champagne in the middle of the concert. And so that tradition will keep going. Hearing Peter Krasinski on that magnificent hook organ in Mechanics Hall, that was one of our best attended concerts of the year. There is a desire by local people to hear local people, and that is so important. And for Bach, it was all local people. You know, it was the kids he taught in his school who sang his choral music. It was his sons who played the harpsichord concerti that we heard H&H, Handel Haydn Society from Boston, come and play. So yeah, it turns out that all of Bach for all of Worcester is so important that we want ownership within the community.
So I might do a bit of a fast forward question. Let's say it's the end of March 2035. About a week before the project has concluded, you're on the podium having led the B minor Mass. What would be on your mind? What would, you know, the question of how would you define success, I think is a bit of a cop-out because this has never been done before, which I keep on forgetting. You know, we're really charting a new path here, but project concludes, you've had a few nights to sleep. What is on your mind?
That is such a cool question because, first of all, it feels so far away, except that because the blueprint has worked, I can see that it will unfold. I'll tell you what I hope I will think. Again, I will not go down the rabbit hole, but it is true that Bach's music is not, although it is very architectural, it is not architectural like Mozart. Like if you picture the Supreme Court building, that's neoclassical and that's Mozartian architecture. Bach's architecture is so fundamentally self-generated. And if you think about a nautilus shell and this spiral that starts somewhere very small and then goes out, see, that's actually, I talk about this in all my podcasts, that germ of an idea, a fugue, that subject then expands outwards. In a wonderful kind of parallel that only happens with Bach, I have realized this year that this project is the exact same thing. Each iteration is larger. We hope that year two will include more people, will bring more people into this nautilus-like vortex of Bachian activity. So what I'm hoping will happen at 10 years from now, no longer 11 years from now, 10 years from now, a decade from now, is that I will look out in that audience. And what I hope is we'll have to do 2 performances of the B minor Mass, because we will have Bach will have brought so many new people into this community that they will all want to be there to celebrate it. And that's what I will be so moved by. I will say the project of cantatas that I did in Sydney, where they performed all the choral cantatas over several years, I'd have moved back, wonderful successor, Greg Platt, who we will almost surely be able to get over here to do some conducting. All these years later, Adrien, these boys who I taught just like Bach at a high school, and then they stayed on to sing in the Bach choir, who are now having kids and their kids are in school now. I'm so lucky to be able to talk to them about what that meant for them. And for them, it was a life-changing thing. On the one hand, it was just what they did. But on the other hand, years later, they can't believe that they were part of something so large. And I think that's what the feeling will be, that we were part of something so far beyond ourselves. And the foolhardiness of it is part of what makes the experience vertiginous. And will it work? Won't it work? But so thrilling. That's what I think.
Well, staying with the idea of thrilling, you've mentioned a few key moments coming up in year 2. Musicians of the Old Post Road, the Sebastians coming in, the Worcester Chorus will surely be there as well. Will certainly be there. But could you walk us through some of the other highlights? We have one particular main event coming in October where an artist we know very well will be doing something for the first time, right?
Yeah, let me finish with that because that's the closest one. Yes, the Brandenburgs, so excited about that. We'll have a keyboard concert in March where we're going to turn around so that all those seats around the stage and around the organ, the audience will sit there. The keyboard players will face in that direction. So get a so the audience can see what it's like to be sitting in the choirs and looking out at the seats that way. Worcester Chamber Music Society, who's a really important partner to us, they're going to be playing the musical offering, which is one of the most, I'm going to say this, but I don't want to be off-putting. It's one of the most intellectual of Bach's pieces, but it's also really accessible to listen to. That's the genius of Bach. We have our cantatathon, so we're very excited about that. Very excited that Emmanuel Music, who's a very important partner for us, and it was with them that we kicked off the whole thing with the B minor Mass. They're going to start their series of solo cantatas with some wonderful singers from Boston. And that is balanced. They use modern instruments, balanced with musicians of the old Post Road who will be doing some solo cantatas on period instruments. So this next year is really the first time that we're going to, it's a bit of a theme of next year, that people will get to compare the different ways that Bach is performed these days. So that in the keyboard concert, you'll have piano, but you'll also have harpsichord side by side. And I insert no value judgment, but people can decide for themselves. Christmas oratorio, half of it, it's a long work. So the Worcester chorus will sing with some terrific soloists, including Kevin Diaz, who's one of the great bass oratorio singers in America, and he was able to come and do this with the Winchendon musicians led by Andrew Arcacci, and they play period instruments. So that's one way of hearing it. And then let's talk about the thing this fall, BACHtoberfest. Yeah, so Simona Dinnerstein is, I mean, how lucky are we that both Jeremy Dank and Simona Dinnerstein are in our family with Music Worcester, such incredible Bach players. So Simona is going to be playing the 2- and 3-part inventions, which many of us, you're a pianist as well, played as kids and sort of suffered through. They're not super hard, but you learn them young, so they feel hard when you're young. But to hear them in the hands of a genius just makes all of that make sense. She will also be doing the viola da gamba sonatas with cello. This is what modern instruments usually do, with her great collaborator Alexis Gerlach. But perhaps the most important thing about that weekend, apart from BACHtoberfest Choir, for which we already have many singers signed up, like over 80 now, right? Simona Dinnerstein, and the breaking news here, will be making her conducting debut with Concora, the professional choir that I conduct, that we've heard many times in Worcester, and her ensemble Baroqueland. So that's really exciting. I'm not sure how I feel about having such competition in my industry with somebody who is such an extraordinary musician. But as a choral musician, I can't wait to hear what is inside that capacious brain of hers. And they will also, Baroqueland with Simona, be performing all of the music from their recent recording. And I've done a video about this, Complicité, which is extraordinary. So it's a really big deal to have the Complete Bach be where Simona launches this next phase of her career.
Well, fantastic. Fantastic all around. And Chris, thank you for letting me join you and lob these questions your way. And we all look forward to the years ahead. Thank you.
But we also enjoy the fact that we have a summer vacation.
Till the fall, till BACHtoberfest.
Thanks, Adrien. Thank you, everybody.